Hey, good afternoon, everybody. Welcome back to Taboo Talk. I'm Dan Daly, and I wanted to just start diving right in. I want you to analyze this with me as I tell you this. Now, what I don't understand is my mother was sent off to a home for unwed mothers out of sheer humiliation, then allowed to bring me home, me, an infant, home with her with no means of support. According to an aunt of mine, and that's how it was quote unquote translated, right like this. My grandmother came from a lineage of moms taking care of their own, sacrificing for the good of the kids, which is supposed to the way it's supposed to be. That's fine. And how adults should be. But, and here's where it starts getting good, not enabling a daughter's alcoholism and narcissistic tendencies to bring home a quote-unquote, and this is me describing me, a bastard of a child. What was the point of sending her daughter away to an upstate home for unwed mothers? Tell me that. What was the point? I'm trying to understand this part. My aunt tries to defend my grandmother, allow my mother to bring me home, which is complete BS. I don't care what the era or what the era dictated. I don't care if it was 1900, 1850, 1920. I don't care when it was. When you have common sense and human dignity dictate you don't have the means to support a baby, you put the baby up for adoption. Now, I'm told, ironically, my grandfather allegedly was talking to my grandmother. Now, I've deduced that this could possibly be either while they were waiting for my mother to have the baby, meaning me, or I don't know, or it was just after she arrived back at the house. He asked her, can we adopt him? Now, you tell me. Let's analyze this. Why? My guess is I was just brought back as an infant, and already I was being mentally abused by my mother, and grandparents obviously saw this, and they witnessed the abuse and her drinking, which also says that my mother did not want me, period, okay? I believe she coerced my grandmother by saying Brian, my biological father, was going to marry me. Or her, I should say. Which was a total lie, because I found out that he had no intentions of marrying her. And why? Because according to cousins of mine, she was way too promiscuous for any wife, and he did not want her to be part of the family. Well, I believe it was going on. My father was going to marry, again, like I said, they realized this, my grandparents meaning, and they asked themselves, can we adopt them? Now, they're 55 years old at the time, retired. They had no big pension, no money to raise me. Yet, my mother was allowed to abuse me. Okay, they allowed this. Now, I know what you're thinking. You're thinking it just doesn't make any sense. That's correct. Because that's what was baffling me and still baffling me until I realized that I think that my grandparents fell prey to my mother. They were afraid of her. Don't know why. They were on eggshells around her. I was on eggshells around her. As a matter of fact, everybody that came in contact with her was either on eggshells, they knew not to say anything, which also subsequently followed that the visitation slowly dissipated from relatives over time because they simply didn't want to deal with the BS. They didn't want to deal with the complete tension in the house. And when I'm telling you tension, you could forget it. Forget a steak. A butter knife would cut this. A fork would cut this. Now, as time went on, police were called more than numerous times by neighbors due to my mother's drinking and abusing me in the open, in the yard. And I'm not kidding when I was told this. Now, I'm 1, 2, 3 years old. This is what's happening here. Yet no one spoke up to have my mother arrested. The cops would come over. Now, keep in mind, this is circa 67, 69, 70, okay? I'm laughing because I'd rather than cry. But it's actually pretty pathetic when you think about it. They came over, the police, saying we have complaints of rowdiness and possible domestic abuse, which is what it was called. And they wanted to find out if you to press charges. I have to find out the laws. I should have done that prior to this podcast, and I apologize for that. If anybody out there knows the rules or laws of back in 66 to say 71 about if the cops were called by neighbors accusing the mother of domestic abuse toward the child or alcohol or anything to do with abuse toward the child, do me a favor. Write me at DRD, that's Delta Romeo Delta, ALY 66@gmail.com, and let me know the answer, and I'll be glad to talk about it. And I'll arrange to have a scheduled call-in from you, if you'd care to, because it would be great help to me to find out exactly why I wasn't taken away. See, no one spoke up, as I said, to my mother, and the answer I got from several people was that if you don't admit it, it didn't happen. Okay? No, that's not okay. Because, see, it did happen. I was becoming subliminally brainwashed from the time I was born. My mother was cursing like you wouldn't believe. I was absorbing it like a sponge. I didn't know it, but I was. Any child absorbs anything like a sponge. We all know that. Now, when I was about 3 or 4, I wasn't allowed to play with other neighborhood kids. I wonder why. I was just told I wasn't allowed. I was kicked out of friends' houses. These are other friends I met about a year or two, maybe 2 later. I was kicked out of friends' houses because I actually started cursing at 6 and 7 years old. I started saying holy S. I actually said mother effer. And I was asked to leave. I was crying my eyes out because I couldn't figure out why. And I would later find out that the kids and the parents didn't want their kids associated with those kind of people in bold type. Those kind in bold type, meaning trash. Meaning my abusive, drunk mother and brainwashing she was doing already. I was fighting for her love, and that's true I was. I was fighting for it. I shouldn't have had to fight for it. It should be automatic. I was fighting for it. And then I was going to my grandmother for love and affection, which is what my mother was actually blaming my grandmother for, and part of what she was yelling at me for. Remember what I told you about those Saturday nights? Well, guess what she was doing on Saturday nights? She was yelling at me, saying, you go to your grandmother for love and affection. What about me? Meanwhile, she's cursing at me, calling me a bastard. Okay? This is what I was going through. This, again, only a snippet. Now, I think my grandparents fell prey to my mother and in narcissistic ways. And like I said before, everybody was on eggshells. It was called "keep the peace" in quotations. That's all I heard. Keep the peace. Okay, I'll be explaining more of this on the next show. I'm going to go on to some other news now. Again, write me, drdaly66@gmail.com if you know if you know those laws about domestic abuse, and if the police had any right to actually go in and arrest the perpetrator without someone giving permission. And also, if you have any questions or something you want me to address on the show, please tell me. Now, this was in yesterday's New York Post. Black men reveal why they are no longer supporting Democrats. You heard me right. Basically, Mark Fisher, the co-founder, he co-founded Black Lives Matter in Rhode Island. He's voting for Trump for the first time this election, after being a long-time Democrat. And he said, in past presidential elections, he said that they've been hanging carrots, essentially, by people and not delivering. And they said Democrats are not invested in black communities. Now, I've lived in Albany, and I've seen this up close. And this was before, this is during Trump's first tenure in office. About maybe a square mile, maybe give or take, of the Veterans House on, I believe it's First Street in Albany. And I got this straight from a detective. They may have arrested people, black men, African American men, but they were never prosecuted. Never. And that came from order of the mayor. No, I don't have proof, but there's no other explanation for it, because they were back on the streets the next day. I saw them. I saw this every single day. That was just a little bit of a snippet of what I experienced upstate New York in 2016. And according to what Mark Fisher, the founder, said, during the protests in Providence, I left from the front, putting myself at risk and putting myself on the front line. These are all quotes. I'm not paraphrasing. Who organized 2 major marches, but our enemy is not the white people. Our enemy is the overzealous government. Quote, unquote. Fisher said Biden has done little to help the black community while in the White House. Donald Trump, his pro-school choice attitude and tough stance on the border have inspired him to reconsider his politics. Tough stance on the border. And people, I got so carried away with this. Basically, the bottom line is this. Fisher said Biden has done little to protect to help the black community in the White House. And he said immigration is also, quote unquote, immigration is a political third rail. And it's political suicide. That's why nobody has ever addressed it until now, which is one of the reasons why Donald Trump has such overwhelming support. He takes on the issues that most people actually don't talk about. And that's exactly what my program's about. I don't care what the issue is, I will address it and I will call people out. Once again, thank you for listening. And please, again, Delta Romeo Delta ALY 66 at gmail.com is my email. If you know anything about those laws about domestic abuse, especially on kids, please email me the answer or the laws. And please cite the laws so I can tell that to on the next show. Thanks for listening, and I'll see you in the next show. Have a good day.